Matt Borman, thank you so much for joining me for this short clip edition of Betting on America. Just for viewers to know, we just put out a podcast with Matt who takes us through the history of export controls, the role of export controls in recent years. Let me start with what's happened in London in recent weeks, negotiations between the US and the PRC. Export controls weighed heavily, both export controls on leading edge chips from the US and tit for tat controls on critical minerals from China. Really an interesting dynamic with export controls being part and parcel of trade negotiations. Matt, tell us how we should make sense of all this.
Thanks, Navin. So I'd start by putting it in context. Every administration comes in with priorities, including in export controls. To just name a number very quickly, Clinton administration had to deal with the end of the Cold War and the rise in the risk from proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Bush administration, for example, really focused on resetting strategic trade relations with India for technology and geopolitical reasons. Obama had the Export Control Reform Initiative to really free up U.S. supplies to foreign allied military platforms. Had a big initiative on Cuba. The first Trump administration was focused on rolling back to Cuba, for example, but also really took some first steps in terms of putting commercial companies on the entity list for national security reasons, Huawei and a couple of the big foundries in China, SMIC, Fujian, Jinhua. And then the Biden administration, of course, heavy focus on AI chips, advanced chips, and the advanced tools, among other things. So from one perspective, what Trump 2 administration is doing is setting its own priorities. What I think is very unique, though, is until now, national export controls, national security have been explicitly described as being separate from trade negotiations. And here, what it appears to be from statements by Trump administration officials is that some of these national security-based export controls that have put in place very recently could be modified or removed if China does the same for its restrictions on rare earths. And frankly, the U.S. and other allies had been criticizing China for some years now for misusing their export controls for economic retaliatory purposes. So I think it'll be very interesting to see over the next few weeks to months how this plays out in reality. Press reporting is that China has now started authorizing exports of rare earth again. I don't know if the Trump administration has yet taken any reciprocal moves. And if they do, how do they justify that when they were put in place with a national security justification?